Click each word or phrase on the tablet screen to see the definition. When you are finished reading the definition, click the next. Small appliance.
Products manufactured, fully charged, and hermetically sealed in a factory, with 5 pounds or less of refrigerant. When servicing a small appliance, it is not mandatory to repair a leak, but it is recommended to do so, whenever possible. Technicians servicing small appliances must have Type 1 or Universal certification.
R600A.
R600A is a hydrocarbon refrigerant approved for use in new household refrigerators, freezers, and combination refrigeration freezers. Note: hydrocarbons are not approved for retrofit applications.
IHRI 740.
IHRI 740 is an industry standard that requires recovery devices used with small appliances to be able to recover 90% of the refrigerant when the compressor is operating, or achieve a 4-inch vacuum. When the compressor is not operating, the recovery device must be able to recover or capture 80% of the refrigerant using either a passive or active recovery process, or achieve a 4-inch vacuum.
EPA-approved laboratory.
Recovery equipment used during maintenance, service, or repair of small appliances that use CFCs, HCFCs, and HFCs must be certified by an EPA-approved laboratory.
Sales restriction.
The sale of CFC, HCFC, HFC, and HFO refrigerants to service or install refrigeration and air conditioning equipment is restricted to technicians who are EPA certified in refrigerant recovery.
Low-loss fittings.
Recovery devices used to recover CFC, HCFCs, and HFCs should contain low-loss fittings that can be either manually closed or automatically closed when disconnected to prevent loss of refrigerant from hoses.
Type 1.
The certification required for technicians to charge and open small appliances containing a maximum factory charge of 5 pounds or less of refrigerant that have been hermetically sealed and charged at the factory. An MVAC-like system that holds 3 pounds of R12 does not meet the criteria for Type 1 appliance certification.
System-dependent recovery equipment.
The maximum normal charge of HCFC or HFC refrigerant in an appliance that is allowed to use system-dependent recovery equipment is 15 pounds.
Adding or removing refrigerant from a small appliance.
All appliances must be equipped with a service aperture or process stub to add or remove refrigerant from the appliance. Small appliances typically have a straight piece of tubing that is entered using a piercing access valve.
Passive recovery device.
A domestic refrigerator is an example of a refrigeration system or appliance for which it would be permissible to use a passive recovery device. When using passive recovery devices on small appliances with non-operating compressors, it is essential to take measures to help release trapped CFC, HCFC, or HFC refrigerant from the compressor oil during refrigerant recovery.
Self-contained recovery machine or device.
Any person who opens an appliance containing a CFC, HCFC, or HFC for maintenance, service, or repair must have at least one self-contained recovery machine available for use. The exception to this rule is persons working in small appliances. When using a self-contained recovery device on a system with an operating compressor, technicians must either recover the refrigerant to 4 inches of mercury vacuum or 90% of the nameplate charge. A large volume of non-condensable gas in the refrigerant being recovered can cause excessive pressure on the high side of a self-contained or active recovery device.
R744.
R744 or carbon dioxide is a very high-pressure refrigerant that generally does not need to be recovered.
R404A.
New household refrigerators may not be factory charged with R404A or other HCFC or HFC refrigerants.
Contaminated refrigerant. Contaminated refrigerant. R404A. Contaminated refrigerant. Contaminated refrigerant. Refrigerant recovery procedure.
Before beginning a refrigerant recovery procedure, it is always necessary to know the type of refrigerant that is in the system.
Contaminated refrigerant. Contaminated refrigerant. Refrigerant recovery procedure. R22, drop-in
There
substitute.
is no such thing as a drop-in substitute for R22.
Passive, or system-dependent, recovery process.
A passive, system-dependent, recovery process for small appliances captures or recovers refrigerant in a non-pressurized container. When using the system-dependent recovery process, and the compressor does not run, both the high and low side of the system must be accessed for refrigerant recovery.
Recovering refrigerant into a non-pressurized container.
When recovering CFC, HCFC, or HFC refrigerant into a non-pressurized container from a household refrigerator with an inoperative compressor, it is helpful to heat and strike the compressor with a rubber mallet.
Access fitting installation.
When installing any type of access fitting onto a sealed system, the fitting should be leak tested before proceeding with recovery.
R410A.
When R410A is recovered from an appliance, it should be recovered into a recovery vessel that is clearly marked to ensure that mixing of refrigerants does not occur.
Recovery speed.
Low and high side access valves should be installed when recovering refrigerant from a household refrigerator to improve the speed of recovery. To speed the recovery process and ensure all CFC, HCFC, or HFC refrigerant has been removed from a frost-free refrigerator, turn off the defrost heater to increase the refrigerant's temperature and vaporize any liquid.
Standard vacuum pump.
A standard vacuum pump, designed specifically for evacuation and dehydration, can never be used as a recovery device in combination with a pressurized container.
Storage cylinder pressure.
By using the pressure temperature chart, we can find the pressure of a storage cylinder of the following recovered refrigerants. The refrigerants do not contain any non-condensable impurities and are stored in a room where the temperature is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. R134A at 80 degrees Fahrenheit is 87 psig. R410A at 80 degrees Fahrenheit is 238 psig. R404A at 80 degrees Fahrenheit is 174 psig.
Non-condensable gas.
A large volume of non-condensable gas in the refrigerant being recovered can cause excessive pressure on the high side of a self-contained recovery device.
Refrigerant scale, or tank, internal float device.
Refrigerant scale or tank internal float device is an acceptable method or device presently used for monitoring the 80% fill level in a recovery tank.
Hydrochloric and hydrofluoric acids.
CFC and HCFC refrigerants can decompose into hydrochloric and hydrofluoric acids at high temperatures, such as open flames and glowing metal surfaces.
Phosphine gas.
CFC and HCFC refrigerants can decompose into phosphine gas at high temperatures, for example, open flames and glowing metal surfaces.
Refrigerant leaks.
If a large leak of refrigerant occurs, such as from a filled cylinder in an enclosed area, and no self-contained breathing apparatus is available, vacate and naturally ventilate the area. A very large refrigerant leak can cause suffocation, because refrigerants are heavier than air and displace oxygen. Wearing safety eyewear and butyl-lined gloves when connecting and disconnecting hoses is a recommended safe work practice when recovering refrigerants. Wearing safety eyewear and butyl-lined gloves when connecting and disconnecting hoses is a recommended safe work practice when recovering refrigerants.
Nitrogen for repair.
When using nitrogen to repair a sealed refrigeration system, the nitrogen tank should always be equipped with a regulator.
Manual or self-sealing valves.
When attaching a gauge set to check system pressures, the gauge set hoses are required to have manual or self-sealing valves on the ends to minimize any release of refrigerant.
Mixing refrigerants.
Refrigerants cannot be mixed in an appliance.
Compressor burnout.
When a pungent odor is detected during a sealed system recovery and/or repair, it is most likely that a compressor burnout has occurred. A technician should watch for signs of contamination in the oil when recovering refrigerant from a system that experienced a compressor burnout, because the system will have to be flushed if contaminants are present.
Charging cylinder.
Refrigerant that is vented off the top when filling a charging cylinder must be recovered if it is a CFC, HCFC, or HFC.
Piercing access valve.
After installing and opening a piercing access valve, the recovery procedure cannot begin if the system is at 0 psig.
Solderless type piercing valves.
Solderless type piercing valves should not remain installed on refrigeration systems after repairs have been completed, as they tend to leak over time.
500 microns.
The minimum evacuation level that should be achieved in most refrigeration systems before charging the system is 500 microns.
Recovery equipment maintenance practice.
Recovery equipment should be checked for leaks on a regular basis.
Congratulations, you have completed this course. Click the Exit button in the top right corner.